So I am Dereck Joubert, and I am a National Geographic explorer at large and conservationist, filmmaker, and a general dog's body.
And I am Beverly Joubert. We are partners. I'm also a National Geographic explorer at large, filmmaker, photographer, and a producer of our wildlife films.
So when we started out about 35, 40 years ago, there was definitely more wildlife. There were big herds of animals that we were filming and taking for granted in many ways. So when Beverly and I were born, there were 450,000 lions, for example, and today there are 20,000. We've seen leopard numbers drop from 700,000 in our lifetimes to about 50,000, if that. And we've seen elephants in our lifetimes go from 2 or 3 million elephants to under 500,000. So these numbers are crashing. We've seen in our lifetimes 90–95% declines. We've also seen the human population dramatically increase by threefold, and included in that is human poverty and human utilization of those natural resources. On top of that, we've seen and starting to see ever increasingly the effects of climate change, where floods are more extreme, rains are more extreme, droughts are more extreme. So it feels like we are at this tipping point where Africa is sort of groaning under the influence of people, and it's become more and more evident in the last 30, 40 years. What we have also seen, though, is a growing love affair between the people of the world and Africa. People care now more than they ever did before. And in that, we find that balance. We find young generations really wanting to help, wanting to write about it, wanting to protest about whatever's going on in Africa now. And so I think there's good and bad. And one of the good things about a large human population is that there's also a large army of advocates who can help. And so, but there have been some significant changes.
And then talking about the advocacy side, about 13 years ago, we started the Big Cat Initiative at National Geographic. And that's solely because of those numbers and the stats that Dereck was giving you. And when you look over at that period, it's between 75 to 95% decline of all the big cats. Now that is alarming. And if we're losing the most iconic species, we're losing everything else. And we're also losing the true pristine land, that accommodates everything. But we slowly strangulating the last remaining areas. So it's harder and harder for these animals to migrate, and it's harder and harder for these areas to be protected if there are, little pockets. And so advocacy is key. Compliment you and compliment the National Geographic for wanting to speak out about these issues, because if we don't take action now, we aren't going to be successful. Just to give you an example with the Big Cat Initiative, we've got about 128 projects right through Africa. And these are people on the ground that are like-minded. We give out grants and they're working with the communities. So the communities are being educated on how to live side by side with ferocious predators, and that a live predator is worth way more to them than a dead one. Hunting isn't a form of conservation. It's very evident, as I mentioned, a live animal is worth way more to an ecosystem and to the communities, and actually to the individual countries and governments.
So yeah, I think that ethically, rationally, ecologically, economically, all of these things, there's no place for hunting in Africa anymore. We spent a lot of our lives fighting against it and worrying about it from an ethical standpoint. But it just, everywhere we go, every argument we hear for it just doesn't make sense anymore. And while we've got these declining species, to be hunting the very last of them onto their knees and into extinction doesn't make sense to me.